Hey, what's going on YouTube? My name's Matt, and today we're back with another Borderlands 3 topic, and we've done the other side of the coin. Now we're gonna do this side of the coin. This is 10 things we do not want in Borderlands 3. So let's start it off with a few easy ones. Number 1, do not try and be Destiny. Now, we know Destiny borrowed some aspects of their game from Borderlands, and that's fine, and I'm sure Borderlands is going to borrow some aspects of Destiny, and it'll end up in Borderlands 3. Inspiration is fine, but my point is, we do not want Borderlands 3 to be an MMO. Now, there's nothing wrong with MMOs, and I am a fan of Destiny. I don't like Destiny as much as I like Borderlands, but Destiny scratches an itch that, frankly, I needed scratched. And with the success that Destiny is having, you know, you're going to see companies like EA chase it with Anthem. We saw Ubisoft chasing that idea with The Division. And, you know, a Borderlands online game already got shit canned. So let's leave that be. Let's focus on Borderlands' strengths. Number 2, predatory microtransactions. Now this one's pretty obvious. I've done a couple videos on the topic already, and I'm sure that won't be the last video I do on the topic. But let's be honest, we don't want to see the game destroyed because microtransactions are just overbearing and they just flat out destroy the gameplay. Just look at the uproar over Battlefront 2. The game's not out yet and it is a shit show. That should be a lesson if there was even the thought of doing something like that. If you want to keep the player base, you won't do that. And you just cannot do it. We don't want it. Number 3, PvP. Now, a lot of people argue that Destiny is better than Borderlands because, you know, Borderlands doesn't have PvP. I've even seen some fans of the series suggest that there should be PvP. I am very against that, and because of this, I worry that if it happened, that Borderlands Gearbox, they would sacrifice the quality of Borderlands 3's story, character development, and just what the game's strengths are. I don't want that to be the expense of having multiplayer. I can't tell you how many games had multiplayer just for the sake of having multiplayer. I mean, I could name hundreds of them, it feels like, especially around the 2010 time period. How many games can you name that had a multiplayer mode just because that's what you needed to have? That was the trend. No, we don't need that. We need the good old co-op gameplay that we've grown to love with this series so far. Number 4, crafting and creating a character. Now, I grouped them together because they both would defeat the purpose of what Borderlands is about. I don't need another game to toss in crafting just for the sake of it. Now, things like the Cauldron in the Halloween Headhunter DLC and the Grinder, they're okay by me. There's still some RNG. It's not overly broken where you can, you know, put this in and we're gonna get some insane gear and you can just abuse it. But the ability to make guns just doesn't fit in Borderlands, nor does a unique, personal character being made, because you're supposed to have character choices. The game is built from the ground up with different classes of Vault Hunters, and they're each unique to their own, personalities and how they can be played. And there's a story around them. If we were to have our own created character, I think that would really take away from that. And so far, so good. I don't think Gearbox will do that, but that's definitely 2 things we don't want in the game. Now, coming to number 5, limited endgame builds. I don't want that again. Now, balancing in Borderlands 2 is questionable to say the least. Some people will agree, some people will say, well, you know, I think it's dependent on your playstyle and how you really want to use Borderlands 2. And personally, you know, a lot of the characters and weapon types were useless. You know, assault rifles, we've heard the story of Borderlands 2 and assault rifles. Most of them just aren't that good. There's a few that are usable, and most of the time it's because Axton has skills revolving around that. And other characters were obviously stronger than others. You know, a Sal with a B and a Herald and a Grog can solo any OPA raid boss, and it's not that difficult. Whereas if you tried to do it with a different character, you could argue that it's something that would be very challenging. And at the very least, if you don't agree with that, you can at least agree that Sal is one of the most overpowered, video game characters, period. The amount of DPS that dude can put out is absurd. So hopefully in Borderlands 3, the end game will be balanced a bit better, and it'll be something where you don't have to make tough choices or you have to build into specific builds to remain viable. Give us some variety, give us some abilities to play how we want and not have it be impossible. Number 6, Pandora. Don't get me wrong, Pandora's been great. I really like the set piece, but just like Handsome Jack, it's been the star of enough games, and it's time to move on. Now, I've done another video talking about where Borderlands 3 may be set and just some of the hints that we've had, and personally, I think Pandora might be where we start in Borderlands 3, and then we end up taking a mission or some sort of plea or random, radio transmission. Something might happen that'll bring us off planet. But as much as Pandora has been a wonderful, wonderful place for me to run around, I'm ready for some new adventures, some new enemy types, and of course, a new story and a new vault to chase with some new characters that I am ready to just learn everything about them. Number 7, returning legendaries. Look, it's totally okay to have some of the most beloved, iconic legendary weapons in the next game. That's fine. Like, if the bitch and the conference call were in Borderlands 3 or whatever the game's going to be called, that's fine. But if there's a ton of them, you're talking exorbitant amounts of legendaries from prior games, then, it takes away. Why would I want to farm for all the same stuff again? Obviously, they're not going to bring all of them, but the more you bring, the more that becomes an issue. Now, we've always asked for more guns, more loot that means something, so with the idea of that, give us more. Get creative with it. Branch out and just refine and expand what works. Number 8, Slag. Now, I don't dislike Slag. I think it certainly has a place in the game, but it comes from a place of balance. Now, if you look at the other elements, they have strengths and weaknesses. We know that when you're dealing with shields, you should deal with shock. If you're dealing with loaders, you use corrosive. So, moving on from there, obviously we don't need more examples, but you use fire on enemy types that are people, bandits, psychos, things like that. So why is it that Slag is something that in Ultimate Vault Hunter mode is absolutely essential? You're going to need either the Grog or a Slagga or anything that is something that excels in the Slag category, so you'll be able to put out the damage to survive. So personally, I don't think it needs to go entirely, but the reliance that you need in Ultimate needs to be reduced or reworked in some way where it's not overbearing. Number 9, limited bank and inventory space. I can't tell you how much it sucks that you can only store 63 weapons per character. 67 if you want to leave things in the locker, which I do. And honestly, if you look at other games, there's hundreds of spaces in the bank or the inventory. And I see a lot of people complain that, you can digistruct cars and all this different stuff, and I can only carry a limited number of weapons. There's gotta be a workaround, whether or not it's lowering the cost of how fast you can grow your backpack and your bank and it never runs out, or we get 300 slots and that's it. Something needs to be done, because the fact is in Borderlands 2 it was far too little and the spaces filled up very quickly. And number 10, a returning playable character. And what I mean by that is a playable character that has been playable in a previous game. So if in Borderlands 3, for example, we could play Mordecai or we could play Maya again, I don't want that. Now, that's not to say that I don't like those characters, because I totally like those characters. They're great characters, but part of the enjoyment of getting a new Borderlands game is learning the new characters, the new ideas that the company comes up with, and that would be hugely tarnished, and the amount of hours that I could sink in the future game would be limited if I had the option to, say, play Sal again or Maya again. You know, I've put so many hours in Borderlands 2, that's almost getting to the point where it's like, okay, well, if she's not entirely reworked, it's the same. So as much as I like those characters, for the sake of the game, I do not want to see a playable character in a previous game be a playable character in Borderlands 3. So that was 10 things we do not want in Borderlands 3. If there's something you thought I missed or something that you necessarily don't agree with, that's fine. Let me know. Let's keep it constructive down below. I will see you in another video later in the week. If you like this sort of thing, remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you on the flip. Later.